Welcome back. And moving on to our first segment for today to shed the light on the Arab Summit. And of course, this summit taking place in Bahrain, and many files were discussed, on top of which is the Palestinian cause. Well, over the phone, we have the pleasure to have Dr. Hassan Wagih, Professor of Political Science. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. So first of all, let's shed the light on the significance of this summit taking place. And of course, just as mentioned from the Egyptian side, that even words now can never express the anger that all of us feel when we see everyday people are dying and innocent civilians, women and children are dying, and even they cannot reach any of the humanitarian aid.
Yes, of course, the situation is so grave. There is a humanitarian catastrophe. A continuation of the war causes a great deal of tension, and this should be de-escalated, and the Arab Summit is required to issue resolutions, not recommendations, with commitments to de-escalate the situation and bring back things to the interest of the Arab side and everyone in the world.
Right, if we are talking about all these entities and the legal and of course the international entities that we are talking about, having resolutions and having many items to be taken into consideration when it comes to the resolutions in general against Israel, and even though still Israel is not taking into consideration any of them, and we didn't see any of the sanctions even against Israel, just 1%. We cannot see this. Don't you think that there is any way out of this dilemma? I mean, how can we put pressure on Israel to at least, we can say, abide by the international law?
Yeah, actually, this is a very, as you said, it is not only a dilemma, it is a conundrum. It's much more complicated than a dilemma. So I think that the Arab Summit is supposed to, I expected that there should be international actors, the Secretary of the United Nations and the other leaders should attend, and if they did not attend in this summit, the summit should come up with a resolution to continue the meetings with international figures, with international entities, because the situation needs international intervention. The Arab-Israeli conflict has always been very complicated and characterized by dilemmas. And it will never be solved unless there is a strong international mediation. And we remember that the United States, we would like to remind the United States of the role played by President Carter when he was so balanced and bring land for peace as a principle, and he solved the problem. And I think that we should remind them of leadership like that. We should remind the people with all international figures who really are in an angry status, and they feel that what's happening is totally unfair. It's totally characterized by double standards. So I think the silent majority should be activated. I mean, if we do not invite international actors with good weight in this summit, the summit should come up with a resolution to continue its meeting with international figures so as to implement what could be decided as fair-minded resolution.
On talking about the current situation and all what is going on, and still when it comes to the Rafah border, for example, and what was mentioned about it, and as we can see, of course, if Israel wants to allow more humanitarian aid to the civilians over there, they will let it in, not only through the Rafah border, but they are controlling all the borders and all the outlets or the places from which we can reach the civilians over there. So how do you see this? And again, we are looking for the common demand that is an immediate ceasefire?
Yes, actually, when it comes to what is happening in Rafah, yes, I have to mention that Egypt has exerted a great deal of effort and exposed what we call strategic patience, and took every possible step to de-escalate the situation and bring a ceasefire into reality, and allow humanitarian aid to get with great numbers to save those people who are being exposed to a famine. This is a terrible situation, but Egypt is doing that with great care and with gradual steps, and I hope that everyone would understand that what's happening when it comes to all these things happening, it is an international responsibility. So this is why it would bring me back with connecting the Arab Summit with the international circles that really can enforce a solution, a fair-minded solution to save millions of people who are being exposed to famine, and their places are destructed totally. As we have seen, the rate of destruction in Gaza is terrible.
So what options or scenarios do we have when it comes to both sides, whether we're talking about Israel or the Palestinians, if they're going to continue like this? I mean, there must be a way just to cut it out or to reach this ceasefire.
Actually, we have extremists. The problem lies in extremist mentalities and zero-sum mentalities in the Israeli part, in the Israeli mentality, it's current now, and it has been like that, unfortunately. And you can see that the situation is so grave when it comes to how Netanyahu is describing the International Court of Justice, and his ambassador in the United Nations looked at the resolution taken by 143 states. This is an international community opinion, and he almost rebuked that stance, and he stood there, shredded the UN constitution, and in a very violently, verbal violence, said, "Shame on you, shame on who?" This is a terrible situation, and this is irresponsible diplomacy, and people in Israel should come back to their senses for their sake, for the sake of their country and for the sake of the area, and for fair-minded solution for everyone.
So, talking about this summit, and of course we have seen the stance taken or how all the Arab leaders, of course, and the nations in general, all over the world, they are not accepting what is happening, and no one can ever accept this genocide war. So how do you see having some more resolutions, or how do you see the effect of this summit?
Actually, the summit should mention all the kind of data that showed that it is a genocide. Actually, it is more than a genocide. It's genocide mixed with cleansing, ethnic cleansing, and what's more, what we call ethnocide. Ethnocide is to destroy everything traceable to your culture. We have seen destruction of churches, mosques, museums, every monument that really remind the Palestinians of their land is being destroyed. This is unbelievably terrible, and this is ethnocide in addition to being a genocide.
Wasn't that taken before into the international court?
Yes, of course.
And what happened?
Why I am saying international parties should bring back the whole thing into the international court, and actually the Arab stance is very clear and very strong morally and humanitarian wise. The Arabs are intending to, in this summit, to represent the Arab initiatives, which is based on a very fair-minded solution, peace for land, two-state solutions, and recognizing that state that really outlawed everything in the world, but hopefully they would come back to their senses.
Well, how far can I say that really the real loser is Israel? I mean, of course, yes, every day we lose lives of people, of the Palestinians, but when it comes to Israel in general, I think that Israel will need decades to just erase this from its history and to make people forget, because actually when we talk about Israel, we can see the whole world now. I'm talking about the citizens, nations. For the first time, no one is ever accepting from different generations this genocide war.
Of course, what is being done in Israel is what could be called the easily self-defeating strategy. What you guys are doing, you are making enmity, you are deepening enmity between you and all your neighbors, and between you and all the Palestinians.
And the whole world as well.
I beg your pardon?
And the whole world as well.
And the whole world as well. But look, you are talking about, if they are thinking in clear way, they should have not done what they are doing, you know. And if you insist that Hamas and Hezbollah should be obliterated, they came as a, if we use linguistics using the context theory about text trajectory, let us go to the context, to the real deep context. The real deep context is brutal occupation. Brutal occupation brought Hamas and brought Hezbollah. And if the Israeli, as they claim, they can obliterate them, which will not happen, because on the reality, the other way around is taking place. If they can do that, there will be another resistance movement. We have to understand that the international law allows the resistance of occupiers. They are occupiers. They have to come to realize this reality, and they have to abide by the international law, and to know that if Hamas is not here and Hezbollah is not here, other movements with other names will emerge to resist the occupation. So they should change this kind of equation. They, as the United States of America, who really try to say Hamas should not be there or who is not to be there. Nobody can be not to be there. But you have to be doing politics according to the mechanics and the fair-minded mentality and for the rights of everyone, and not to be a zero mentality and to play the terrible, more than zero mentality now is getting into terrible genocide, terrible ethnocide.
Well, just when we take a look at what is happening, as you mentioned, we have different equations. So, for example, if we just looked and we can see the international leaders and the countries who are condemning this barbaric actions, and they are saying that we need to give the Palestinians the rights and allow more humanitarian aid, asking for ceasefire. And in the meantime, when we look at what happened when the war took place between Russia and Ukraine, immediately we have seen sanctions, many sanctions against Russia, and every day supporting Ukraine with weapons, with money, with everything. So what's the difference?
No, for my own point of view, international diplomacy is facing a terrible era where this zero-sum mentality is at work. And I actually, as a citizen and as an expert, I would condemn all those zero mentality people all over the world. Whoever is starting it, I don't like to mention any kind of comparison, but the answer is very clear. Zero mentality will never come up with solutions to the real humane problems that the world is suffering. And I hope that diplomacy and the complex diplomacy should be deployed to avoid this zero mentality from being dominating. And actually, the Arab Summit has to face this, because this zero-sum mentality by international powers are being implemented in our area, not only in Gaza. what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Somalia, what's happening in the Red Sea, okay. So the complex diplomacy needs another mentality, and I hope that this zero mentality will not continue till it comes to a real, more disastrous situation.
Well, since it started and even before the October 7th, we have seen Egypt actually making or having tremendous efforts for the Palestinian cause, that Egypt never forgot the Palestinian cause and always working for this cause. And now we have seen all the efforts exerted since it started, I mean this war started, that was on the 7th of October. So far, how do you see it, and especially when it comes to the opening of the Rafah border since the first minute to allow more and more humanitarian aid, and of course now it is controlled by the Israelis as well?
Actually, the situation or the stance taken by the Egyptian leadership should be commended and should be commended in the summit, because Egypt has exerted a great deal of diplomatic efforts and never stopped that diplomatic efforts. And Egypt is ready to continue that diplomatic efforts if others would respond positively to Egyptian mediation, which is a mediation for the sake of fairness, just peace, peaceful land, right of the Palestinian people with red lines. No transfer to Sinai, no transfer to any other place. Palestinians should have their own state, and people could live together and co-live together in peaceful situation for the development of all the peoples of this area.
Right. Dr. Hassan Wagih, Professor of Political Science, thank you very much for joining us. And moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back.